So this could be the weekend. This could be the weekend that the Springboks win their first Rugby Championship since 2019. I think they're going to do it, and they've named their team to take on Argentina in Argentina. That's what we're going to get into in this video. So welcome back to the channel. My name's Alfie. Let me know what you make of this Springboks team. Do you see them winning it this weekend? I think it'd be pretty tough to bet against them, but let me know. Argentina are no pushovers. And also, whilst you're here, like the video and subscribe to the channel as well. So this is the team that Rassie Erasmus has selected. And as I was trying to digest this and think of the talking points and the big things to get through, for me, this team selection is classic Springboks in the Erasmus era. In that there's quite a lot of changes. There's a fair bit that you can get into, and yet everything kind of stays the same. What I mean by that is there's a whole bunch of players, top quality players, World Cup winners that have been left at home. There's 10 changes from the previous game. There's young guys coming in, not to mention, by the way, all the injuries that the Springboks have had to deal with so far this season, which we haven't forgotten about, but we're not mentioning really because it doesn't seem to be affecting them, such is their strength in depth. But it's that classic thing of the Erasmus team. They will make changes, they will rotate, they will get experience into the squad while still having a load of experience there. So I feel like this team selection, even though the names might change, is very similar to what we've seen from the Springboks, not just this season, although we've definitely seen it this season, but over the last few years. So as a reminder, in terms of the players that were left at home, you've got Willy Leroux, Cheslin Kolbe, Damien Dialende, Sasha Feinberg, Ngoma, Peter Steph Dutoy, Frans Malherbe and Bongium Banambi. Bags of experience, bags of quality. But they say, do you know what? No, you've done enough so far this season. You have a rest. We're going to give other players an opportunity. And out of all those names, has there ever been a rugby player that deserves a rest more than Peter Steph Dutoy? The guy is an absolute animal, an absolute machine. He's been brilliant so far this year. And actually, I say he deserves a rest. I think he's the sort of player that doesn't need one at all. Like, he could probably play every single week and still hit world-class levels. But that made me laugh. So those are the players that have been left at home. And then we've got 10 changes. And as I say, this is the kind of squad they've gone with, which is the usual mix of experience, younger players, less experienced players coming in, trying to rotate that team. I do find it fascinating. I think it is one of the, certainly from my perspective, as an Englishman, one of the most interesting things about the Springboks is how even now, midway through 2024 now, they're still talking about the World Cup in 2027. And I don't think there are too many other nations that, if they're about to play a decider in the Rugby Championship, would be speaking a lot about the World Cup. It just goes to show how much that is what South Africa are gearing towards. Like, I actually think England, for example, and it's just a cultural difference. Clearly, it works. The Springboks have won the last 2 World Cups. But I think if England, on the eve of a Grand Slam Six Nations decider, were speaking about the World Cup in 3 years' time, the fans would react really badly to it. I find it a really interesting cultural difference, I suppose, between kind of the rugby nations. But anyway, let's get into it. There's a few just different points. 10 changes in total. I think there's a few things that stood out to me. Number one is the second rows, which is Salman Murat captaining the side again and starting again. And he does seem to be a name that you regularly see get questioned. Doesn't have too much in terms of caps, but is an experienced player in terms of the Stormers, is viewed as a leader in that team. That's why they give him the responsibility of being the captain. And I suppose the other thing with second row is there are injuries there. That's maybe going to be something to keep an eye on if the likes of Lude return and are fit. Franco Moster as well is another one that I think we will still see more of. Where do the second rows shake up when they do have all those guys fit and firing? But he's in the second row alongside Ruan Nortje. In fact, more generally, actually, it's kind of experienced backline and less experienced in the forward pack. In terms of the other positions and amongst those 10 changes or the things that we've seen there, Pollard at fly half again, and Manie Libbok on the bench. This was one of those games that I really wondered if Libbok would be given the opportunity to start. Does it tell us anything that he hasn't been? Or maybe is it just confirming what we probably know based upon this season, that Feinberg Ngoma is probably the number one, I think. Pollard is then the number 2. He's been there, he's done it, he has bags of experience, and you know that you can rely on him in the biggest games. And then Libbok has kind of been bounced off for the time being to that 3rd spot. I think we will surely see Libbok start the last game in the Rugby Championship, presuming the Springboks win this weekend and win the competition. But I think in terms of the fly half shake-up, there has been movement, hasn't there, this season, particularly with Feinberg Umgomazulu and his rise. Rapid rise, really, when you consider that he only made his debut a couple of months ago. And then you've got Pollard at fly half steering the ship. I think also, actually, if you look at this team selection, maybe it's less to do with the rankings of the fly halves and more to do with what I mentioned a moment ago of the experience of the forwards compared with the experience of the backs. Because if you look at the forward pack, there's still experience there, isn't there? I mean, you know, Malcolm Marks, 71 caps, Oxenche, Thomas Dutoy, both kind of 20 caps, 35 caps. But I think there's less experience there than in the back line. So therefore, in the back line, you go with the experienced players. The final thing I wanted to mention in terms of individual players is Eben Etzebeth. If he comes off the bench, which he will, he'll equal Victor Matfield's record for caps for the Springboks, 127. Unbelievable, isn't it, for the 2 second rows? The pain, like the grind you have to go through in that position, the quality as also that South Africa have in that position. Etzebeth is one of the greats, isn't he? Like, he's one of the great South African players. I wonder where he ranks. I'll do a video on it probably later on this week because he's right up there. What a player, what a landmark, what an achievement for him. And also, actually, in terms of milestones, I think Pollard is 4 points away from going into 2nd all-time point scorers for the Springboks as well. Which is another one to keep an eye on. I think ultimately, when I look at this team though, it's balance. It's, as I say, less experienced forward pack, despite still some experience there in terms of the starting team this is, and more experienced backline. And building for the World Cup. Building for the World Cup is always at the forefront of South Africa's mind, whilst still trying to win now. And I think that is the most impressive thing about how they've started this year, is they are winning whilst preparing for a tournament that's going to happen in 3 years' time. That is an incredibly difficult thing to do. When you see most other nations kind of, I don't know, what's a good example? Maybe like a Wales, even in England, maybe, in terms of kind of having more finances and bigger playing pool, more strength in depth. When they start a new era or start building for the next World Cup, there's usually a bit of pain along the way. South Africa have basically picked up where they left off winning the World Cup last year. It's scary for the rest of the world. It's impressive in terms of what they are doing. And I think they're going to win the Rugby Championship this weekend. As I say, Argentina they're a really difficult team to plan for because there are times where, frankly, they don't look that great. And there are other times where they look brilliant. They've beaten New Zealand this year. They've also lost to the Wallabies. So what Argentina team that South Africa come up against, I think, will go a long way in determining what this match is like. I still expect South Africa to have enough, but it won't be easy, but I think it will be confirmation that they're going to end up as the winners, the champions of the Rugby Championship, as I say, for the first time since 2019. What do you make of this team? What do you make of the various selection? Is there any other names that stand out for you? I kind of picked out the 3 or the couple for me that when I was looking at it were really worth talking about. I suppose you could talk about Afalele Fassi coming back in at fullback. Jesse Creel starts again at outside centre. Other bits and bobs there. So let me know your views on it. And whilst you're here, don't forget, like the video and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss a thing. I'll see you in the next one.